A block Gemara. Today's daf is daf Nun Beis. Today's daf is daf Nun Beis. So we are continuing to learn the laws of Boyd. And yesterday we spoke about that if somebody sells a boiler, a pit, to a friend, and as soon as he gives him the lid, it's a kinyan. And we explained the lid itself is not a kinyan. The lid is an expression of saying, or it's tantamount to saying, go proceed and do the right kinyan, the right form of acquisition. Because you have to say, Leich chazeku kni. So from that, we segue into other instances where you have to give something, you have to say, Leich chazeku kni, or if you do a certain activity, that is tantamount to saying, Leich chazeku kni. For example, the very bottom of the page, Nun Aleph on the base. Shimon Levi said, somebody sells a house's friend. As soon as you gave the key to them, they are koina. Says he, what do you mean they're koina? Just by giving the key to a house, they're koina. The person paid money for the house, then then the money is a form of acquisition. Why do you have to give the key? And if they went ahead and they mended the fence or something else, Taisa brings a big machlekes exactly what it means. Chazaka, does it mean it's closing the door sufficient to show that your ownership, or you actually have to make some repairs? Be kind with the chazaka. So what do you need the key for? You have to say, if somebody goes ahead and merely does a chazaka, it's one thing to give money, then obviously that's a kinyan. But if you go ahead and mend the fence or something, I have to tell you, instruct you, go ahead and go do your form of acquisition. Giving the key is the same thing. The key, by giving the key, it's good enough. We have a machlekes shayim in other places, in Boston, and we also had it in Psachim, that if the key itself, maybe that's a form of kinyan when it comes to renting. There it talks about chametz on Pesach. Whoever has the key, the night of the 14th, is the one who's responsible. Is it because the key gives ownership, or is it because the key gives you access, not because of ownership? And the Gemara here, it seems the key itself doesn't give any ownership whatsoever. We are up to 4 lines from the top of the page, 5 lines from Beis Amud Aleph. Amar Shlokish, Mishum Rab Yanai. So we're talking about forms of acquisitions, and you want to say to the person, go ahead and perform the kinyan, and you give something, and that is, action speaks louder than words. It's tantamount to saying it, go ahead and make a kinyan. So for example, 5 lines on top. Forget about the pit that we're talking about till now, but some other form of selling. Amar Shlokish, Rab Yanai, he's selling a flock, a herd to your friend. As soon as you send him something which draws all the entire flock to you, kana, you're ready kana. So again, the same question. That's what kind of form of acquisition is that? Generally, when it comes to animals, how do you acquire it? You drag it to yourself, you show ownership, or you pass on the reins. So even Mashiach doesn't work in all different domains. So if it's in the Mashiach that where it works, the Mashiach, then that's the kinyan. What do you have to give him something else that attracts that herd? And even Mashiach by handing over the reins, where Mashiach doesn't work, for example, so in a public place, Mashiach doesn't work because you don't really have ownership there. So Mashiach, passing the reins. But if you do Mashiach, I have to first instruct you. The vendor has to instruct you. Go ahead and go do kinyan. The keep it, the muscle you gave him something which attracts the herd. It's tantamount to saying, go ahead and go perform your acquisition. My mashchuchis. What exactly is this mashchuchis? Here they say kakashta, a bell. Rabbi Yaakov says Iza. They used to have a leader. Even goats used to have a leader who used to be in the vanguard, the avant-garde, who's being in the front, and he was the most perceptive, would see with pitfalls, and all the goats would follow him. Either the Ozla Beresh Eder, that's the goat that leads in the head of the flock. So therefore, if you give that over, that's a kinyan. Right before the mission of the Beis Moral, we're talking about that if you do something, as if I say Lech Hazek Kini, instead of if you make a kinyan, money obviously is the kinyan, but if you do other kinyan like dragging it, drawing it to yourself, I have to tell you, the vendor, go ahead and make a kinyan. But if I give you, say we said before, give you the cover of the bird, and I say here, go ahead and do whatever you have to do, that's a form of a kinyan. So from there we segue. If you give a key for a house, as if I'm saying, go ahead and make a chazaka, fix it up. I'm selling you a flock, and I give you the bell that sort of tracks the flock, or if I give you the leading goat because one goat is to lead everybody else, and everybody used to follow blindly, then as if I'm saying to you, go ahead and do your kinyan, which is Mashiach Masira. So the Gemara says a very nice analogy here. Ahu Galilah. It was this person from Galil, a later of Chizah, who stood next to Rav Chizah, used to be his Moira, stand next to him. He said the following: Kadrogas Raya al Ona. If let's say the shepherd is angry with his flock, he wasn't going to go punish each individual goat or sheep. No, he takes the leader and makes him blind. And says everyone follows the leader. If the leader falls in the pitfall, whatever falls in, then everyone follows. And it's a dogma that if the people in the community deserve to be punished, they should make sure that that the leader is useless, and everybody follows the leader, and they're all in trouble. As Rashi says, he gives them parnosim. She doesn't say rabbis, which is very nice. She'eina mu'ganin. Parnosim are the presidents of the boards. He gives them boards that are not proper, and they suffer for that. So if you have a board that doesn't run properly, don't blame the board. Look at yourself. It's the community that's at fault. Fascinating. But Rashi definitely leaves out the Rabbanim. They're always good. Mishnah, Iso Harishan. So remember, we were talking before about two partners who have a bird together. And first we try to work out how it's possible for two partners to have a bird together. We explained in a private property, or they dug out the last kernel. What happens now? The partners and Kiseyu Harishan, the first guy covered it. Before we learned about one guy passed it on to the second guy takes responsibility. What happened? The first guy covered it. But the second guy came along and found that it was open. It wasn't opened by the first guy. Somebody opened it. For example, it was wormy and the lid fell apart, or whatever. It fell apart. In Veloy Kiseu. And he didn't cover it. So the first guy discharged his responsibility because he put a lid on it. The second guy saw that there was no lid. Hasheni Chayv. The second guy is responsible. The first guy is potter. Now the question is, how long the first guy potter? Forevermore? You know, what happens a week later? Nobody came and saw it. The first guy was the last person to use it and put a lid on it. So is he totally exonerated? You might want to talk about that. What happened? Kisau Kuro, they covered it properly, but nevertheless, a cow or an ox or a donkey fell in the mace and died. Potter, you are potter. So the obvious question is: so how did it fall in if you covered it properly? You might will discuss that. What happens like Kisau if you didn't cover it properly? Then you are chayiv. So the first case, it's not your fault. You put a lid on it. So you did whatever you could. The second case, and even though who has to make a hole in the first place, but since I put a lid on it, I took care of it. But in the second case, where I did not put a lid on it, obviously I'm responsible. What about nofal lefonov? The animal fell face first. Remember, we had an argument, what's the cause of the burr? What are you paying for? Because at the end of the day, burr is only a cause. For cause, you don't pay. The Torah said, nevertheless, I'm going to hold you responsible. So is it the chabota, the impact, or is it the havola, the stayolier? And Rav said it's a stayolier only, and Shmuel agrees. But Shmuel says it can either be the stayolier or it can be the impact. Because according to Shmuel, even if it's very, very wide, so there's no stayolier, but if it's 10, 12, whatever, and falls down and dies, you're responsible because of the impact. So what happened? And in order for the stayolier to affect you, you had to fall face first. So your nose is hit to 10 tefachim. If you fall, your head, the back of your head, and the entire bar is 10 tefachim, then your nose is actually higher, and then therefore, in order for the stay lid, it have to be face first. So what happens? He fell face first. For example, you had a worker there working and fixing up somewhere in the bottom of the pit, started to bang, and this caused an animal to be scared, frightened, and it slipped, whatever, and it fell into the boat. If it fell the owner of the boat is chayiv, even though the shor normally doesn't. A shor pekech, we're going to learn is it takes responsibility. He should look where he's walking, but not he got frightened from the noise or the banging noise. What do you call? He fell backwards. Potter, you are potter. And we're going to see the Gemara is going to talk about what about the guys making the noise, making the sounds. Why doesn't he have to shoulder any of the responsibility? Middle of he's making all these sounds, and we'll see later why not. Because he's only a grummer. He's a cause. And bar is also only a cause, because you're not bringing the hezek to the animal. The animal came to the bar, but because the Torah said, "Balabar, you're responsible." Okay, doesn't say that regarding the person of the noise. Studying one further. And we're going to have a rule later that if you cannot collect from one person, you collect from the other person. If two people together cause a damage and one of them are not responsible, you collect the entire amount. Rav Nosson says from the other person. Since the person, the truth of the matter is the two partners here. The boyer is the pit, but the person making the noise is also a cause because that's it frightened the animal, and the animal therefore fell in. But since you cannot collect from the person who made the noise, because it's only a grumma, even though din is shemayim from, if you want to do the right thing, you should pay for it. But in a court of law, you can't force them. So then you turn to the other person and say, well, you owe half. We have nowhere else to collect the other half from. We're going to go to you. Okay. That's what the Gemara will talk about. Okay. Said the Gemara further. Where are we? Not followed now, as far as the laws of boy, we already discussed before, but this Mishnah tells us a boy we have a pasuk shoyer v'chamoy shoyer v'loy adam. If a person gets dies, you're exempt. If he gets damaged, you're chay, but not if he dies. And chamoy v'loy kelim. If you soil clothes, or you break pots and pans, you don't have to pay for that. So nafal toich shoyer v'kelim. So what happens if a shoyer falls into that pit together with its whatever the bundle is on top full of vessels, finished tabru and broke, or chamoy v'kelim with a donkey, which was always used then as a courier, and all the kelim v'niskaru and a rip. You're exempt from paying for the kelim because you don't pay for that. Not for the toichai shoyd cheresh shoyd v'katan. If the shoyd itself was cheresh or shoyta or a cotton, very young, so therefore you cannot say that the shoyd could have looked and taken care of itself. You are chayiv, you're chayiv. We'll discuss that later as well. Then a bas, if let's say a child, a young child, a young daughter, a young boy, a young girl, falls into the boat. We say before, maybe an adult, because they're looking out for themselves. Why is the owner of the boat responsible? An adult should take care, but a child who runs around and they take no responsibility for themselves, maybe the bala boat is chayiv. And there is no. Or eved or amma, you might think that an eved or an amma, a slave or a maid, is like a commodity. They're not really considered people. So no, they're people and potter, and if they fall into a bar, you are potter. Says the Gemara, let's go back to the beginning of the Mishnah. Mishnah says the first guy covered the lid, and the second guy comes along, uses it later, and sees that it's, sorry, the second guy walks on and sees that it's uncovered. The second guy takes responsibility. But so the first guy is potter forever. Once you put a lid on the bar, that's it. I don't have to worry about it ever again. Now the big machlek is Rashi tells you what B'dei Sheyeda means. Rashi says B'dei Sheyeda means that he till he walks by a second time and he actually sees it for himself. If the first guy in a week later goes by and sees the lid is removed, then he takes on now the responsibility of making sure that's covered as well. But till he walks by, he's exempt. That was very, very lenient here. According to Taisus, B'dei Sheyeda means that there's rumors going around is enough. If people say, hey, I walked down the street this morning, there's a pothole there, but there was no cover. And if the rumors abound, we say that he should have known. So it doesn't matter whether he personally saw it or not. So according to Taisus, Rav is being very machmer. Okay, Shmuel says, but they share to you. Shmuel says, no, you actually have to notify him. In other words, even though he didn't see himself. So according to Rashi, Shmuel is more machmer. Even though he didn't walk by the boy, but he was told about it. As soon as he's told about it, he's responsible. And according to Taisus, Shmuel is being makel. The first opinion is as soon as rumors abound, he's already responsible. Taisus, no, he doesn't have to worry about rumors. He has to be told. Which means now they're both responsible. Not that the first guy's only responsible. They're both responsible. Okay.
Does that mean everyone who knows about it is responsible?
No. The owner of the bar, the people who created the bar, he put a lid on it. Yeah, so he took care of it. But if the lid became wormy and fell apart, or somebody came and took the lid off, so what happens to the owner of the bar? He's not responsible anymore. So we're saying he is responsible either when somebody tells him, according to Shmuel, or according to Rav. If there are rumors, he should have come right back, or if he ever walked by again and he saw it, the moment he saw it, it's his responsibility to cover it. Not the people around him. They didn't make it all.
No one else is responsible until he's in the in-between time.
Cool. I mean, it'd be the right thing to do. Yeah, but they're not chai. Rabbi Yechanan says, I'll go a step further. They should notify him. The Yisker Perlim, and he has enough time to hire a worker, the Yichves Arazim, and chop down trees, and cover it. Really, this guy. He wouldn't live to say, pick up his sleeves or there and try and cover himself. No, he has to hire somebody, a handyman, to come in and cover the board. He didn't hire a handyman to make the board, but he'll have to hire a handyman to cover the board. So, because Machlek is Rishonim here, are we talking about also the second guy? Or are we just talking about the first guy? When we say that you're responsible when you had long enough, and according to some Rishonim, this is the first guy. He covered it, so he finished. Now he's told about it, whatever it is, or he found out, then we have to give him enough time that he can, deal with it straight away. But it takes time. But the second guy, because he saw it uncovered, he's there, he had no right to go hire workers. He should have hired a guard. He said, you stay here, or put a sign up there and say, everybody beware, and wait till, and take care of it straight away. Or the second guy also has the same thing. Okay, he saw it uncovered, and he has to go get a worker or something, and the next 10 minutes somebody falls in, it's not responsibility. Okay,
according to that second opinion, there's a second person. Now you're in a Rishus Harabim where you got
two partners in the bar.
These are partners now.
Yeah, we're not talking about strangers. Only the people who and how you have two partners in a bar in the street. We said before is that there was already dug up 9 fachim or something, or 9.5, and they together took one shovel and took out the last scoop that turned it into a 10 fucking bar that can kill. We're talking about partners. Anybody else on the street would be very nice if they covered it, but if they don't, you can't hold them responsible for it.
Who would you choose? Yeah.
But interesting whether B'dei Shemayim you're responsible. Okay, but they are definitely not responsible in a court of law. But interesting in B'dei Shemayim, if you see a hole in the street that people can fall in and hurt themselves, do you have a responsibility to cover it? Not.
Good Samaritan.
Not Jewish. We don't have a Samaritans. Says the Gemara. So the obvious question is, if you covered it properly, how did anybody fall in? How to fall in? You did the right thing, but over time, let's say it was a wooden thing, it rotted. Or it was metal and it rusted, and it fell apart. It imploded or whatever, it fell apart. See, we have an interesting question. What happens? You put a cover that was strong enough to test even the weight of a cow or an ox. But camels, it couldn't carry camels, either because camels are heavier or they don't walk so fast, so they hang around it. This lid is not strong enough for camels. And then what happened was, the Asur Gemalim Baru came along a camel and sort of ruined the lid, but the lid was still sitting there. And then Asur Shvarim and the Shah came by, the lid was still there, thinking that the lid was strong enough to hold the Shah. And the Shah, it collapsed and the Shah fell in. What would it then be then? Are you considered an oinus? It's not your fault or not? So you might have run away deals with him. What are you talking about? What are we talking about? If you knew that there were camels that were crossing this road as well, then the lid wasn't good enough. Just because you made a lid that was strong enough for a shoyer, for an ox, but it wasn't strong enough for a gummel. So you didn't do. So you're a pesha. You're negligent. You can't call yourself an accident, even though it was an ox that fell in. Then pesha you. Then you're negligent. And because the Gamal came by and ruined it. The Loishchi Gamal, generally Gamal don't come down this road, only ox. And honestly, why should he be responsible? He did the right thing. And you on a road, you cover the pit and suddenly a tank goes by. You don't expect tanks to go by. Occasionally the camel goes by. Primarily it's used by oxen, but occasionally a camel goes by. The question is, do we say since occasionally a camel comes by, then you were negligent, you should have built a better lid, so you were negligent. You should have realized it. Or perhaps the fact is that right now there are no camels over here right now. What fell in? A shoy? Then maybe honest, or he's an honest. So how do we treat this? So the Gemara Toshma coming here. It says in our mission, you covered it properly. The nafal and then an ox or a donkey fell in. The mesa died, pati a pati. That's what our mission says. You covered it properly, but they fell in. Now the question is, how did it fall in if you covered it properly? Obviously, a camel walked by and ruined the whole thing. So if a camel came by and ruined the lid, so what you talking about? Did you know that there were camels there? So then why are you potter? You were negligent. Obviously, there were no camels don't generally go by there, only occasionally, and yet the mission says you're potter. So we see that this answers your question. Then how in the time, and then how in the world did it collapse? We built a lid that was good enough for shvarim, but not good enough for camels. And if If there are camels there, that might potter. Why you potter? Pesheyahu, you were negligent. And if it was not common for camels to be the pshita honest, it's not your fault. Elalav the asa prokim, exactly your question. Occasionally camels come by, but also the Mali would ruin. A camel did come by and ruined it, but also Shwad, even Nuffle, and then a shark came in and fell down. Uktoni Potter and says, yes, since that it's only occasionally, and for sure you built good enough. And right now it wasn't a camel that fell, it was a shark. Alma, even the hash, the leka, onusu. Right now there are no camels, and there's a shark that collapsed. You're an honest. Answer your question. The Gemara Rabbi says, no. You built a proper lid and it could withstand even camels. So how did the shirt fall in if you put a lid on there and strong enough to withstand even camels? Like we answered before the Gemara, how fell in? It was wormy. It was a wooden lid, strong, but over time it was infested with worms and they ate away and eventually fell apart. So it's a total accident. That's why you are part. Okay, Toshma, let's go for the next clause in the Mishnah. The next clause in the Mishnah is the flip side. And what happens if Loiki Sokro, he didn't cover properly, and then they fell in? The Mason died, Chai b'chai. Let's understand. Isn't that obvious that you're Chayiv? You put a lid on that couldn't withstand anybody's weight. Then Pshita, obviously, it's as if you didn't cover it. So, of course, if you dug a hole in the street and you put a lid on it that couldn't withstand anybody's weight, and then it collapses, and then an animal falls in, of course you're responsible. We need a Mishnah for that. You have to tell us the Chayiv. Elalav must be talking about in the case exactly what you asked. It's karol shvarim like karol gemam. It says it wasn't a suitable lid, means it was suitable for oxen, but it was not suitable for camels. Hey, now what exactly happened? If camels are going to come by there all the time, then you as if you didn't put a lid on there. And again, so what's the chiddush in the Mishnah? Then there's no chiddush. And if you didn't put a proper lid, of course you're chayiv. But if the camel don't come by and you put a lid on that could withstand the ox, then anusu. Why should you be? Then it's an anus. Why should you be responsible? Why does the Mishnah say you're chayiv? Ella must be talking about the asin leprokim. It comes by sometimes, but also gemalim and camels came by, but aru and they ruined it. But also shvarim enough and the cow fell in, and the Mishnah says, since you were lax when it came to camels, and you should have anticipated that occasionally they do come, you'll be chayiv. Uktani chayiv. Alma we see, even the asin leprokim pashayu. Faces and remarks. It's pretty interesting that first thing you might want to prove from the first part of the Mishnah that in this case you're exonerated because right now there's no camels there. And now, from the very same Mishnah, from the next case, we're trying to prove that you're chayiv because you should have anticipated. So Taisa says, how can you learn from one Mishnah two opposite things? Anyway, the boila sukkah daita, you should realize it. The Gemara said again, la'oila, maybe we're talking about karol shvadi. The Mishnah said the lid is not a good lid. We're talking about it was good enough for oxen, but it was not good enough for camels. And I said, malam, camels have come there all the time. So if camels come there all the time, so obviously it's not a good lid. If it's not good, of course it's chayiv. So what's the Mishnah trying to tell you? So what do you the Mishnah tell you about? It's obvious. With the kashla pesheyu is negligence, of course he's chayiv. He says here, I did the nosiv reisha kisokero, nosiv namin like kisokero. Because the Mishnah says one case, so we take the flip side, even though it's not. There's no real chiddush involved there. Ikadamri, another version is hanami vadeloi bailan. You're right. That's not even a question. The key and the asla prakim peshayu. Since occasionally they come by, you should have anticipated and put a lid on it that can withstand the weight of camels as well. The boila sukedaita. You should have been aware of that. Novos. Ki boila. Our question is hachihu. The boila. Our question is as follows. Kiseyu kisu sheyachal lamadif neshvarim. Now what happens? This is what happens. You put a lid on it that can carry oxen. It cannot carry camels. So you were negligent as far as camels are concerned, but you were not negligent, and camels go there all the time. And you were not negligent as far as cows are concerned. But you know what happened to the lid? It wasn't a camel that ruined the lid, it was worms. So what happens here, where you were a paisheya, but at the end, the accident that happened was not because of your negligence. The accident that happened was because worms infested it. Then you cannot hold camels. So you were definitely negligent as far as camels are concerned. But what happened was it became infested in worms. What happens then? Do we say do we say since you were negligent with camels, even though what happened was an accident, you're a negligent? We look at the total picture here. We don't say migui. Now, Taisus here and all the shame ask, Gemara is introducing a new idea called migui. Since You were negligent here. Do we carry it over to something where you weren't? But we have another discussion we had before. We'll have in moments here. If something started out, you were negligent, but at the end, what actually happened was an accident. And had a machlekes. If are you considered a pesheya or an accident? Because the payah happened was an accident, but it started out, for example, you said I have plenty more time to daven in the afternoon for mincha, so you could have davened straight away, but it's another 5 hours left. So you're chilasa b'pshia. Then you fell asleep and you didn't daven. But why didn't you daven at the end? Because you fell asleep. So that's chilasa b'pshia b'seifet b'eins. So where does this miga come in? It's the chay. That's the question. So they also talk about a couple of answers. But one answer is Teisha's answer is, when do we say tchilase b'pshia seif b'einus? Is the einus is directly related to the pshia? And you delay, you got tired and so on. But over here, the worms that infested the lid has nothing to do with the fact that camels will destroy it. There were the camels did not destroy it. It was only worms. In this case, you cannot link the two. This is not a case of tchilase b'pshia and then this turned into seif b'einus. So that's where you have to come on to migu. Do we say that since you were negligent for camels, we'll carry it over to something totally unrelated to a lid that was infested with worms? How do we view that? That's Gemara's question. So do we treat you as a negligent person, therefore you're chayiv? And that's what the Mishnah, and that's our question. So now we're going to go back to the Mishnah and say maybe that's what our Mishnah is talking about here. Toshba coming here, it says in our Mishnah, first part. She said, you covered it properly, but the maze and the animal fell and you covered it properly and died potter, you are potter, because it's an accident. A case of worms. Let's understand what happened. Hey, Chidam. You put a pop lid and then was infested with worms. Isn't it obvious your potter? What else? What should you do? He did everything right. He covered the lid, and worms came in and destroyed it. So he should be potter. I don't need a Mishnah for that. What else you wanted to do? We're talking about it wasn't so you weren't so perfect. What happened was that you built a lid that was strong enough to withstand the weight of an ox, but not of a camel. And there were plenty of camels around, but that's not what happened. What happened was it was wormy inside. So we would have thought that maybe in this case you were negligent, you should have to pay. So the Nila Mishnah tell you that you are potter, because the fact is it's an accident. Be chiddush. Uktani potter. Alma, what was he clear my Mishnah? Loy amrina. We do not say miguda havi pasheya linyan gemalim havi pasheya linyan. We don't say, oh, because you're negligent for camels, we'll carry it over to the worms. So here is a we resolve your question. Says Gemara, no. There's a chiddush. Take the Mishnah literally. You covered everything properly, and yet we need the Mishnah to tell you that you're a potter. You know why? Because we would have thought, you think you made a hole in the street and you put a lid and you can go to sleep and move away. Maybe you have an obligation every month to walk by there and make sure that the lid is still there. Make sure that the lid is still strong enough to withstand whatever it is that walks on it, to carry whatever walks on it. That's what we would have thought. We're talking about it's a normal lid. What else? What's the chiddush? No, maybe it has to go and not only look to see if it's covered, but maybe bang on it to see how strong it is. The durability. He doesn't have to. Interesting. Why doesn't he? I was looking up. I couldn't find a reason why. If it's something that happens that wood can be infested with worms, then why isn't his responsibility not only to see whether there's a lid on it, but to check it, to test it, its strength? Don't know. Toshma, coming here. In other words, the whole idea of boyer is a chiddush. That's what it seems from there. The whole idea of boyer is a chiddush because I'm only a cause. And the Torah says that if you do this, it's good enough. So because the whole idea of paying here is exeris akasav, then it's limited to whatever the Torah tells you. If I covered it, I eliminated the problem. It's not my responsibility in the future. Maybe. Toshma, coming here. Let's go for the next part of the Mishnah. Same idea again. You learn from the same Mishnah two opposite laws. Like you say, Kuro, you didn't cover it properly, and if you didn't cover it properly, then you chayv. Again, is that obvious? It wasn't proper at all. Then the chayv. I need a Mishnah chayv. Elalav must be talking about Kuro l'shvarim, but like Kuro l'gmalim. You did it correctly for a shor, but you did not do it correctly for a camel. So again. So if the camels are there constantly there, then we're negligent. Then pashayu. If the camels are not generally there, then honest. It's not your fault. It's an honest. So why should you pay? Why is Mishnah say it's paid? And if there are camels there, I need a Mishnah to tell you you're responsible. Elalav, talking about the shchichik gemalim, talking about camels are there all the time, so you were negligent. But what actually happened here it wasn't the kamalim, it was the worms. So the is an accident. And yet the Mishnah says you have to pay. You know why? Because since you were negligent as far as camels are concerned, we're going to carry over that negligence to the worms. So that result. So the question, exactly the opposite of what we tried to do before. Alma, we see, see clearly with me, you say Migrid. What says the Labdavka? Amri, loy, lo oilam karol, shvarim, lo karol, malim. The Mishnah talking about you did not build a proper lid. It was only good enough for hold an ox, but not to hold a camel. The also malim, and what happened was the camels came along. The aru, the also shvarim and we're talking about. We're not talking about worms here. The second case, not talking about worms. What happened was a camel went by and weakened the lid, and a cow came in and fell in, and that's why you have to pay. You guys, a question is not obvious. Then you were negligent. You're right. But the same thing we said before. I did not say because we brought one side, which is the chiddush, we bring the flip side, even though there's no chiddush involved. So no proof from our Mishnah either way. Toshma, come here, I'll bring you proof. It says in the Mishnah, it says in the Braisa, Nofal Toichai, or it says later on, sorry, Nofal Toichai Shoyd Chedesh, Shoyd Mekotim. The animal itself was deaf and dumb. I'm not sure how you see the dumb part of an animal, but the animal itself was a shoyter, or the animal itself was young. Summa, if the animal itself was blind, it was just born, or maybe some say up to 8 days old, or some say a year old. Or is going at night, so cannot see what's going on. Even if it's a an ordinary animal, but now he can't see, and it falls into this whole chay v'chay. What about pikeach, an intelligent animal? An animal during the day, the animal has to take responsibility. If you have a hole in, the animal falls in, and the owner of the bird does not have to pay at all, because it has to look where it's going. Now the question is, why? Name it. Why do we say definitely you were negligent for an animal that cannot look in front of it? You were negligent. So if we believe in this migri that if you were negligent to one animal, we carried over to another animal, then you should be responsible even if a shor pekech fell in because you were negligent. Why don't you say that? It proves loy amrinen migri. We do not say migri at all. We don't carry over negligence of one to another. Shmamina is a conclusive